The United States is now two different countries because of this Supreme Court ruling. That is not me being hyperbolic. That is not me fear mongering. That is what is happening right now. They functionally eliminated the federal judicial system. I really cannot emphasize enough just how socially destructive this is for our country. If you live in a red state, there is no rule of law. Your constitutionally guaranteed rights can now be openly infringed on, and if your attorney general does not sue on behalf of you as a populace in your state, it just doesn't matter, right? So the Constitution now acts differently in red states compared to blue states. With this ruling, the court is telling you that the executive branch is allowed to violate the law, violate the Constitution. It doesn't matter. Unless there is a lawsuit individually in every single state, they will be allowed to break the law somewhere in the United States. The Supreme Court did not need to do this. They wanted to do this. The entire case was about birthright citizenship. But because the administration's claim is so blatantly illegal and unconstitutional that if you took a third grader and put the Constitution in front of them, even they'd be able to tell you that you cannot undermine birthright citizenship in this country, that the Supreme Court was like, all right, we don't want to touch that. We can't talk about that. So instead, we'll rule on the issue of nationwide universal injunctions. Just because. There is no more rule of law in this country, okay? The Constitution is not uniformly applied across the states anymore. And I don't see how we move on from this as a country. If you have the ability to do so and you live in a red state, I would strongly recommend moving to a blue state. And if you have an election coming up, if your gubernatorial candidates are being voted on in November, you got to take that shit seriously, okay? New Jersey has an election coming up, and we could go red, right? And if that's the case, there is just no more rule of law in New Jersey. Like, we cannot allow blue states to flip. It's getting fucking scary out here.
This is the book of Mark, chapter 3, and verse 25. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Shalom, shalom, Akim. Before I begin, I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Kakwadash. Okay, double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Okay, peace and salutations unto the elect. All right, I'm the brother Gabar Allah coming at you with another lesson. Okay, and today's lesson is going to be based off the video clip you see before you. Okay, now in that clip, the dude talks about a lot of things, and I'm going to replay some of the audio just for myself and for you brothers to really take heed and, really grasp what he's saying. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to play some of the clip again. All right.
States is now two different countries because of this Supreme Court ruling. That is not me being hyperbolic. That is not me fear mongering. That is what is happening right now. They functionally eliminated the federal judicial system. I really cannot emphasize enough just how socially destructive this is for our country. If you live in a red state, there is no rule of law. Your constitutionally guaranteed rights can now be openly infringed on, and if your attorney general does not sue on behalf of you as a populace in your state, it just doesn't matter, right? So the Constitution now acts differently in red states compared to blue states. With this ruling,
Okay, so as you heard him, the red states are no longer going to be functioning the same as blue states still. Now that means that every individual state will be viewed as their own country. Okay, all divided against itself. So that's why I opened up with the book of Mark, chapter 3, and verse 25, which I'm going to start at verse at verse 24. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Okay, and Babylon is a kingdom. Okay, Babylon the Great is a kingdom right now, and it's being divided against itself. Okay, literally being divided against itself. So now, it's going to be to a point where, this is going to lead to martial law. This is going to lead to people not regarding their kings and princes. Or I'm going to grab that in a bit. It says, and if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And this house is not standing. Okay, the house of Esau. Okay, this house is not standing. Okay, now I'm gonna grab. All right, I'm gonna grab this real quick in the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, and I'm gonna start at verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Okay, and woe means death and destruction. It says, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. Okay, again, emphasizing on that kingdom being divided against itself. Okay, people are no longer going to be civil. People are no longer going to have that charade of having, this, that, and the third, and everybody being buddy. Okay, all that is going to pretty much be ruled out. Okay, all that is going to be pretty much like the scriptures say, the love of many shall wax cold. Okay, all that is going to be gone. The love of many is going to be gone. There's going to be no love of people. There's going to be no love towards one another. Okay, people are not going to regard each other as people. Okay, you're not in that day in Jacob's trouble. Okay, yes, the house of Israel is going to be in trouble, but also the whole world is going to be in trouble. Okay, how much more the whole world if the chosen people of the Lord are going to be suffering? How much more the rest of the world? Okay, and how much more Esau? It says, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. It says, for there shall be sedition among men. Okay, and in that word sedition, when you look it up, it means rebel. Okay, in so many words, rebel. It says, among men, and invading on one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. Okay, so they're no longer going to regard their kings or their princes. Okay, and that's because this house is being divided against itself, and this house is not standing. Okay, this goes to show you that the kingdom of the wicked was never meant to last. Okay, this kingdom was never meant to last because these people don't know how to rule. These people were meant to be servants. Okay, the people that rule the world now were meant to be servants. Okay, slaves, if you will. Okay, and when it goes to show you that the wicked cannot rule the earth. Okay, because look at what they're doing. It says, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Right, because each individual city, each individual state will be their own country, pretty much. Okay, and that's going to weaken America, Babylon the Great. Okay, it says, for because of their pride, this city shall be troubled. The houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Okay, men are going to be afraid because of the pride of Esau. It says, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. Right, like I was saying, there's going to be your neighbor is no longer going to look at you like you're a regular, normal human being. Okay, they're going to look at you as something that they need to get by. Okay, hey, I got to eat. Me and mine got to eat. That's the mindset that they're going to be in. Me and my family have to eat. I don't care about what you got. Me and my family have to eat in that day. Okay. So they don't care if your woman is pregnant. They won't care if you're crippled. They're not going to care. Okay. Because they're going to be in a mind frame that, okay, the world is ending. I have not eaten in 5 days. My woman hasn't eaten in 5 days. My child hasn't eaten in 5 days. What am I going to do? Okay, and when the cities, is going to be no laws. Okay, it's going to be martial law. It's going to be hectic in that day. Okay, it says, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Right, for lack of bread and for great tribulation are these things going to come. Okay, now that's it on that. Now I'm going to grab the book of Matthew, chapter 12 and verse 25. All right, and it says, and Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. Okay, so every kingdom that is against itself, aka America, which is doing right now. Okay, America is dividing against itself. Okay, it says, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Right, every city and house divided against itself is not going to stand. Okay, and that's point blank, period. All right, it don't matter what it is, that you're gonna do. These things are coming to pass, and they're coming to pass fast. All right.
The court is telling you that the executive branch is allowed to violate the law, violate the Constitution. It doesn't matter. Unless there is a lawsuit individually in every single state, they will be allowed to break the law somewhere in the United States. The Supreme Court did not need to do this. They wanted to do this.
Exactly. They wanted to do this. Okay. And America is no longer going to be that great city. Okay. So that's why the scripture is saying, the book of Revelation, is that they're going to be astonished at how desolate this place is going to be. Roughly paraphrasing, they will hiss at her plagues. Okay. Because these nations already know that they already look at America as the greatest nation of all time, because that's what America has made itself to be. But, in the coming days, they're going to say, okay, America's not so great, and they're going to come up against it because it's fighting against itself, and it starts within itself, So Lord willing was edifying. Lord willing was uplifting. Okay, I know it was a bit of a shorter video, but, like I said, I just want to bring this up, man. So with that, Lord willing was edifying. Call Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shah Bashim Kakurash. The bond is hit out of the Apostle Green Millstone. Peace and salutations unto the elect. Shalom.